just rely on the stream audio?
Let's just do stream audio, I guess.
Okay.
Okay.
Right,
So
I'm
then
pressing go live.
Okay, me too.
Like, Charlie, it's a good thing that you're on for this one, because like the whole reading thing for the rest, I don't know if it would have been.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind of questionable.
it's really hard. Yeah, but that's why I kept saying I think I should be allowed to do kindergarten again because I think I would nail it this time.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Mandalorian discussion stream. We are live streaming this on the very cozy channel, Corey's Datapad, right? Corey's Datapad, and also over here on EckhartsLadder. And for those of you not in the know, this is basically our live podcast recording. We're also joined by Charlie today, because we finally did an episode where reading's not required. So just for anyone who's not been to these before, basically we won't be responding to chat until maybe the very end. We will kind of just be, again, we're recording a podcast, an audio podcast. Anything you want to add, Corey, before we get started, or Charlie?
See, I feel like if I say anything, you're just going to end the stream still. We haven't done anything yet.
I was going to mute you on my board. I was thinking about it.
It's just cruel.
Yeah, it is.
I don't understand what I've done to deserve this treatment.
Is it your turn for an intro, Corey, or is it mine?
I think I did last time, so it's your turn.
Oh, Charlie, do you want to introduce the podcast?
Yeah, I can. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tapcaf. Today we'll be discussing
Tapcaf what, Charlie?
Mandalorian Tapcaf transmissions.
There we go.
We're going to be discussing the Mandalorian Chapter 13 and I believe Chapter 12 as well.
Mm-hmm. I was going to call you on that if you didn't get it.
Yeah, so we'll be covering both of those episodes, discuss what we can expect in the rest of Season 2, and speculate what we might see in Season 3. So.
And maybe get some of Charlie's initial thoughts on the previous episodes, how he thinks the season's going. I guess since we have a guest on the podcast, even though many who watch our gaming side of things may be familiar with Charlie, should we introduce Charlie, Eck? Or should we just go with it?
So
we do talk about him a lot
Charlie's
on this channel.
Charlie's a vagrant, most importantly. Charlie is the co-host and a lead contributor over on X2, which is the kind of collaborative channel we all have. And he also has his own gaming channel called The Family Bovine, and he's our best friend.
Oh, likewise. Appreciate it. Yeah, it was a bit of a...
Sorry, go ahead.
To say a bit of a late upload for today's video, but got it done in time before Tapcaf.
That's okay. Well, you were a kind of a late addition too, because I was like, why don't we have Charlie on today? And you're like, sweet. So
yeah.
It's not my first Tapcaf though, technically.
Technically not. We only posted one of those 2 episodes though, and the other was about Halo that I don't think anyone listened to. So for a lot of people, this would probably be
their first introduction to Charlie. But
so
I
guess
heard us reference him many times.
Yeah, we do at least once per episode. We talk about Charlie. So
that's good to hear.
Especially because this is usually right before Burial Cart. But we should say that this is a rather impromptu episode for the last couple of weeks. It's just whenever Justin's able to kind of get away and come down from the mountain and share his Mando thoughts with us. So
it's actually an ivory tower, but yeah,
it's actually an ivory tower on a mountain. But
no, it's the map Ivory Tower from Halo 2.
Now you mention Halo, no one's going to listen anymore. But so obviously last night's episode is a lot more fresh in our minds, but we are still going to go back and talk a bit about the previous episode. Are we going to do a spoiler-free section first, or should we just...
you should be watching the show. Yeah.
At this point, if you have not seen the latest episode so far... we'll give you about 3 seconds to get out of here. Yeah, Ahsoka's in it. Look, if you didn't know that, it's if you are listening to Star Wars podcast, but you didn't know that Ahsoka was going to be showing up, your ability to avoid spoilers is both fantastic and terrible, considering that you're here right now. So it's your fault at this point. That's
so. Charlie, do you want to give a bit of back, because people might not know your history with Star Wars or whatever else, or like, is this, if you weren't like doing stuff for X2 and doing Star Wars stuff daily, do you think you'd be watching The Mandalorian right now?
I would have gotten to it a lot later, I
Mhm.
think, because I'm a late comer to big shows, so I'll just watch them all in like one big season, unless it's something that naturally catches my eye. But yeah, so I think I would have probably started about here now, and I would have probably watched through all of season 1 and then gotten up to here. But I don't think I'd have had I don't think it would have had the impact that it has on me now,
because you've naturally became a bigger fan. Just through all the like, you wouldn't have known who Thrawn is, of course, or anything like that.
No, not at all.
That's actually something with this season, I think, compared to last season, where I feel like people who weren't Star Wars fans could go and watch last season, and you wouldn't really miss much. A lot of stuff gets explained in context, but one of the things with the cameos this season is like maybe you'd recognize Boba Fett at the end of the first episode if you recognize the clones from the movies, but like, have you seen Rebels or the Clone Wars, Charlie?
No.
So do you have any context for like who Bo-Katan or Ahsoka were or are? Like, do those names mean anything to you yet?
Yes, because my natural response is to go through like the Lore So Far videos on YouTube. That's where because I won't have time or the energy to watch how many seasons of Clone Wars?
Seven,
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and
four or five Rebels.
Yeah.
And yes, I know some people have like listed like core episodes you should just watch if you want to avoid filler. But yeah, so like I wouldn't.
It's hard when you're like our age to go and watch. Like, even like I was watching Clone Wars, and like it's, you know, kind of my job. I was giving the rewatch before season 7, and it still took me a long ass time, and like I was not very productive for a while. Rebels is gonna be next.
Yeah.
So but like, we're kind of in a little bubble here. Like, I've kind of talked before. I've got a lot of friends who are like, you know, big Star Wars fans. Like, when we were kids, we'd play all the games and we'd go see all the movies, but I don't think a single one of them would know who Thrawn is, for example.
Yeah.
Which makes me appreciate the show more, because it's like they're not, you know, pulling back to give you this stuff, which is kind of cool, because it is such an expensive and such a big show, but it's also like some people are probably missing some of the key details.
Yeah, I have two friends who are kind of I'm not bragging about it. I do have other friends. There's at least two of them who aren't really in the Star Wars bubble, where one's like I'd call him like by regular standards a pretty big fan of Star Wars, and is like aware generally of what goes on with just broader story stuff, and like watches your videos, is aware that I make videos, and
so you're saying I'm famous?
Yeah. Because he heard your voice coming out of my room once, and
oh yeah.
But then I also have another friend who's like doesn't engage with the expanded universe at all, but like she's a fan of the movies. So I kind of want to talk to them about like what they thought of some of this stuff. Yeah. Where I know one has like watched Rebels, watched the Clone Wars, and the other I don't think she has. But she hasn't started watching the season yet because she only wants to pay for 1 month of Disney Plus. Got to wait till December. Let her binge the first few episodes. And I'm like, okay.
There are a lot of people who do that, and it's like they'll see a huge decrease in memberships in January.
Yeah.
And I can't blame them.
Do you think now that the Skywalker saga has completely finished, that they're using the Mandalorian as a platform to bring new aspects of Star Wars to the mainstream media, like Thrawn and Ahsoka?
So I think we'll probably have a bit more to talk about that when we go into our discussion of the second episode. But yeah, I do think like this season, I guess this is a good time to talk about it. This season, it does feel like they've kind of dropped hints, or like there have been episodes like the Bo-Katan episode, maybe the Boba Fett episode, this episode, where it feels like a major part of what's going on has basically been set up for another TV show.
Yeah.
Especially this episode, I'd say.
How do you guys feel about that? Because like to me, I like some elements of it, but at a certain point, it feels like, okay, what are they setting up that's important for this show, and what are they setting up that's important for something else that they're actively working on, and what are they setting up that is literally just in there as kind of fan service? Because there's probably stuff that's going to fit into all those three categories. And maybe Charlie, if you want to,
yeah, go ahead, Charlie. What do you think?
It's like, how is that, as someone who's less engaged with it to a certain extent, how have you felt about those moments?
I really like them. I mean, on a level of like, uh, I really like the character. I've kind of already known exactly what that type of character is because I ended up watching clips of Clone Wars and stuff like that. So it helps piece it all together for me essentially. And I think I'm more engaged in that than say they introduce completely new things through like say the High Republic, like as a completely new slate. This sort of stuff I'm going to engage with a lot more, especially when a lot of the newer generation of Star Wars fans have started on the prequel trilogy rather than the original trilogy. So I think they're going to be the same.
For me, I'm not convinced that any of the major characters who have been introduced are just fan service. But I mean, I'm okay with their payoff coming a little bit later, or in some cases in a different show. Like I'm okay if Boba Fett doesn't make an appearance in this season because I figure at some point he will turn back up, whether that's season 3 or later, who knows. Same with like Bo-Katan's a character who I would be cool with just appearing in this one episode of season 2 and then kind of going off and doing her own thing, because she does kind of serve right now as a stopgap between what the Mando is doing and then finding Ahsoka. But Corey, you pointed out correctly that she's also got beef with the main antagonist of the show right now, Moff Gideon. So unless they have Moff Gideon just lose the Darksaber off screen, which I guess they could, but I don't think they will, she'll probably return at some point.
Yeah, we were talking about this last night, I think, where I feel like the thing that is least likely to be kind of split off into its own show or handled in another piece of media and is more likely to be a core part of what we get out of The Mandalorian going forward is the Bo-Katan plot, because it is Moff Gideon is kind of her big bad as well. And she is like, the show is The Mandalorian and she is Mandalore. So if it gets into any kind of broader galactic context, then it seems like who is leading Mandalore, who's leading the Mandalorians, and how there's some sort of resolution between the Death Watch side of things, or the whatever successor group exists, and Bo-Katan's group. That would be kind of like what this show would be working towards, rather than having like another Mandalorian show for Bo-Katan to deal with the same main antagonist that we're talking about now.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think you're right. That is the one that the show will most likely touch on. When it comes to like Thrawn, especially, what I would like to see is Thrawn as kind of like, he's there, but the Mandalorian is not actively trying to take him down or capable of taking him down. It's just kind of like somebody who appears and maybe he's pulling Moff Gideon strings, but for the Mandalorian's sake, he's okay with killing just Gideon or fighting just Gideon, but kind of just for the purposes of the greater universe, that there is this higher power there.
And you brought up the interview with Giancarlo, where he was talking about that, right?
Yeah, hold on, let me read that.
Well,
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, when I first watched the episode, I thought that the chances of Thrawn actually appearing later on were pretty much like maybe 10-15%, not very likely. But now the more that I watch it, or the more that I think about it, the more likely I think it is that Thrawn does appear.
Yeah.
What was it you were going to say?
Just while you were looking for the actual code, I was just going to set up that the Thrawn name drop comes when Ahsoka is confronting the magistrate of this village. So Ahsoka's thing right now is looking for Thrawn, and so that's where we get a Thrawn name drop for anyone who maybe hasn't seen it but is also listening or may have forgotten or somehow missed that.
And if you,
that's what we're talking about here.
If you're way out of the loop, Thrawn has essentially disappeared as of the end of Star Wars Rebels. So it's been quite a while since he's been gone. He kind of gets whisked away with the main character of Rebels, Ezra, and then he's in the unknown, I guess. Okay, I found that article here. Let me just Control F. Okay, so this article came out with Giancarlo Esposito, who's the who plays Moff Gideon, of course, plus a lot of other great characters in fiction. Gus Fring, yeah, the guy from what's his name in The Boys again?
I don't remember his name. Yeah. Charlie, do you?
Wait, he's in The Boys?
Yeah, he's
remember
the
he's like the
CEO of Vok.
Yes, he is. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I forget what his name is in The Boys.
but he's in lots of stuff. So this is the quote. He says, is basically talking about what are Moff Gideon's greater goals. And he says, I think we're all trying to figure out what he really wants. Somewhere in my brain, I hold out something as some kind of ethical consideration here. When people flow out of control and there are all these different Moffs who have been assigned different areas to be wardens of, isn't there one person or someone that may have guidance over all of them? And that to me is really telling. One person who may have guidance over all of them. That would be like a Thrawn-like character.
Or a reborn emperor. We could get a second, like, maybe it's not the clone from Rise of Skywalker. Maybe we get another Palpatine clone that Mando has to duel with the Darksaber.
That would be very special. Also, why does Moff Gideon know everything about what's going on everywhere? He has some kind of incredible intelligence source, which again sounds very, very Thrawn-y. Plus, I mean, this episode we see Thrawn is clearly up in, like, he's clearly back in action somewhat. The whole point of this character, this magistrate, is that she strips planets down for resources, and during the time of the Empire, that was used to build the Starfleet and whatever else. So it seems pretty obvious that Thrawn is using her to help, get resources again. And if you look at the establishing shots of the planet, you can see not only that the planet's dead, but if you look off in like the background and the vistas, you can actually see these big factories pumping stuff out. So
yeah, so we're like maybe the Mandalorian and even Bo-Katan are dealing with Moff Gideon as kind of the local and more Mandalorian related threat. Thrawn's out in the background as someone who's related, but not someone we deal with. Ahsoka's more dealing with that.
Yes.
And that's what we'll get in the Rebels sequel series, obviously. That's what we're setting up with this. Ezra's out there. Ezra's coming back. We're going to get Sabine, live action, all of these people.
I think it's going to be animated. But yeah. There's also the Beskar connection too, because like both Moff Gideon has been flaunting that he's got lots of Beskar, quite a bit. He was paying the Mandalorian Beskar. My theory is that the Dark Troopers will probably have Beskar armor. And we know that Gideon was part of like when the Empire was sieging Mandalore. So my theory is he probably got his hands on a bunch of it during that. And we also see that the Magistrate has a full Beskar staff. So I kind of see that as maybe a hint that there's a connection between Moff Gideon, who's, still pretty high up, but then Thrawn or some other overlord.
Mm-hmm. So we'll definitely come back to more of these like broader lore considerations. But what did you guys think about this episode in particular? Like,
do you want to start with are we going to do the first one first?
Yeah. We'll go back to the siege here. Charlie, maybe if you had any like overall thoughts on that one before we get into it, because we haven't heard your ideas or your feelings about the earlier parts of the season either. So if you want to.
Yeah,
give us
your general thoughts on the season and then episode 12, I guess.
I think season 2 is wildly better than season 1. Personally, I had to, if I'm going to be brutally honest, I actually had to push myself to watch all of the episodes of season 1,
interesting.
just to get into it.
Like for the middle episodes that a lot of people were kind of saying were slower, or was that a feeling that you had the whole time? When did you watch the first season then?
I didn't start watching until when season 1 was coming to a close almost.
Okay, but it was during its original area. It wasn't like you heard about season 2 being better, then went back. It was
no, it was during it, and I really liked the first 3 episodes. And then it slowed down for me. And
there's like 3 episodes in the middle that are a lot of people think are quite a bit slower, and then there's like the last 2.
The Bryce Dallas episode being probably the weakest, I think, for me on season 1 with the ATST. And it was just it was obviously it was there to build Mando and how how does he under the mask and stuff like that, mini stuff, but it was near the end that I really caught back into it hard. And then season 2, even the filler episodes have just been fantastic. Like I've really enjoyed every single episode to the point where like I'm excited for the next episode, which I wasn't in season 1.
How did you feel about the second episode though? The where it was just the
ice
landing
one?
on, where it's in the cave with the passenger with the reptilian lady.
Yeah, I thought it was great because they were heading. It was heading in a destination I was actually interested in.
Right.
And I was absolutely fine with any pit stops they were having because the overall plot was gripping me to just keep watching.
Okay, so you didn't get the same feeling that you kind of did with the middle episodes of season 1 then, because it still felt more connected.
Yeah, because there's something I'm awaiting to see
Right.
when it comes to these episodes. Finding the Jedi and stuff like that is what kept me going through these episodes.
How did you feel about Dr. Mandible, though? Was that
the giant ant guy? Do you remember him?
Well, wait, what episode was this? The giant ant guy?
It was
end of the first episode, I think.
No, it was the second one before they go to the ice planet. There's like in the cantina. There's just a giant ant named Dr. Mandible who's playing cards.
That's the one that he got the mission to go to. It's who he got the mission to go to Trash.
It's very reasonable not to remember that.
Yeah.
It's not super
out
important.
My memory out of fear.
Fear. I love. Yeah, that was. I'm interested to hear that though. That's good to know. This season's been really good. Like, it's that I'd say episode 2 is. I think most people would agree was probably the weakest episode.
Mm-hmm. And well, you were just saying, Charlie, that like Bryce Dallas Howard's episode in season 1 was possibly the weakest, but to me, her episode this season was possibly my favorite of the whole series.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of you the whole time watching it because it was just basically watching what you did in the tabletop series, but slightly more competent than Neytiri.
Yeah, that's true.
I've really enjoyed where it's going, and obviously the last 2 episodes we've had that we're discussing today has my interest peaked. Like it's the highest it's ever been for this entire show right now. So yeah.
Do you have a favorite of the season in period also?
It is a real toss up of the 2 most recent episodes, which I'll get into later on down the line. It's a toss up between those 2.
Sweet. Okay, cool. Anything else you want to ask him before we move on, Corey, to actually talking about episode 12 or chapter 12?
No, sir.
Okay. So chapter 12 was called The Siege. It's the one. So this is last Thursday's episode. It's basically the one where they return to Navarro. I think this was probably my favorite episode in the series, maybe one of them. They return to Navarro, which I think is a really cool planet, a little lava planet.
Really cool in Minecraft as well. Charlie and I spent a couple minutes there.
It did look cool.
I did keep calling the what is it called, the Ag something, the desert planet Navarro, and that I want to apologize to everyone for that. My lapse in judgment.
I didn't even bother
there.
learning any of the names, which it's kind of nice that you don't have to learn the names. It's just random planets a lot of the time. And then on Navarro, of course, we get that ferret. There's that scene with the ferret. I don't know if you guys remember that. And then there's a class with Star Wars Explained, breaking down the hyperspace trade lanes of the galaxy. And then, of course, the episode culminates in a siege on what they think is an Imperial base. They find little test tube babies in there. Well, they're not babies. They're...
You mean you find a bunch of Snokes?
I'm sure we'll get into that.
Right. There's no...
And then, yeah, we get the Dark Trooper reveal at the end. And I will say, the Dark Trooper reveal, I want to take partial credit for helping to break that, because there were a lot of people saying that it could be or it couldn't be the Dark Troopers. And then somebody messaged me on Twitter and it's like, listen to the end with the descriptive audio. And descriptive audio, for those of you who don't know, basically like it's the regular audio of the scene, and then there's also a narrator explaining what happens for visually impaired people, and it's actually really cool. But yeah, at the very end of that, they explicitly call the troopers Dark Troopers, which I thought was kind of a funny way to reveal that.
Yeah, we'll see how much it actually matches with what Dark Troopers are in like what people's expectations would be from Legends, where like they seem like they're going to be droids as well, or they're just really well trained people who stand in a hallway a lot.
Those could be suits.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think they're probably droids.
But we did also get, just staying on the topic of droid reveals, we got another callback to older stuff here in this episode with the HK-87, I believe, which is like the HK droids from Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah.
So even more of that stuff. It is just a bunch of RPG stuff coming in.
There's a cool detail with those too that I didn't notice, but I saw it on Reddit. The droids have the insignia for the 7th Fleet, which is like Thrawn's fleet. They've got that on their head. So those are Thrawn's droids down there, which I thought was a really cool detail.
Yeah,
but
I've never heard of Thrawn. Who's that?
He's some blue incel.
Okay.
But what were your thoughts on episode 12, Corey? Because we kind of got Charlie in my mini review. Do you want to tell us how you felt about it?
Yeah, I think I did like it more than this episode. Anytime that Greef Karga's on the screen, I'm kind of happy. But we got a lot of just faster paced action than we have in a little while. So that was enjoyable, but I'm really tunnel visioning on why does Dr. Pershing have that stupid Kaminoan symbol on him? What does it all mean?
Yeah, I'm really curious about that too. There's something in the art book about it, but it doesn't really reveal it.
Because I was trying to find any other mentions of like what that meant before, whether it was like supposed to be an insignia for Kaminoans, or if it's just like some unrelated biotech thing that the clones were wearing for that reason, and Pershing has it for something. But it just seems like a weird thing to throw in.
No, I agree. It does talk about the Art of the Mandalorian. It was released in comic book stores early. I do have a copy here. I'm just looking for the art book or the page on that. But speaking of action, did you notice that I could definitely feel like that this was a Carl Weathers directed episode. The action felt like much more kind of run and gun 80s style than like the episode beforehand, which was very flashy, close hand-to-hand combat. I thought it was kind of a nice change of pace, to be honest.
Yeah, like I like both of them for different reasons, and then there's also the action in this episode, which we'll get to in a bit. But like we find out a lot about the backstory for the child between both episodes, just what the Imperial intentions with him are, and then also what the what his actual history was with the Jedi from Ahsoka, who seems like very nonplussed to find out that there's just another Yoda that's been around this whole time. But like she doesn't seem to care.
What do you think that they are planning then? Because you say we learned a bit more, and I agree. What do you think? And Charlie, I'm curious too. What do you think the plans are? Like, what were they trying to do with Baby Yoda? What's going on in those tanks?
Well, the end game is definitely get Gideon force powers, right? Is that a controversial take? Like that seems to be,
because there's still a lot of people who think it's Snoke or something.
No,
yeah,
God
ahead,
no.
Yeah, so my theory, and I remember messaging you about this, Justin. My theory is that Moff Gideon is attempting to become force sensitive manually rather than naturally.
Yeah.
And what was interesting to me, I mean, I love the whole lab experiment angle on any story. So it really was like peak interest for me on that as well. I loved that angle. In the recording though, when they discovered that blog diary thing in the lab.
Today's science experiment is brought to you by Skillshare.
He mentions that Baby Yoda and its M count, but then also another subject with an M count, but I feel like that was glossed over quite quickly. Saw some discussions of it on the subreddit, but nothing more than that.
I think you might be talking about the same thing that I kind of picked up on, but I don't think that's the case anymore. Where like I was kind of getting a distinction between two characters, and that or a possible distinction between two characters where you could read it as that. But I think this episode in particular clears that out. I think that would be tied into the whole idea of like, was Baby Yoda a clone? And I was leaning towards that, and I think Justin and I had a bet about that. We were talking about it earlier. We don't remember what the loser was supposed to do, and at this moment, I am conceding. It was a hard-fought campaign, but this episode that we just watched last night has quashed any possibility of Baby Yoda being a clone. We're going to be working on a transition team to get EckhartsLadder his new place and whatever we promised. So if anyone remembers what the hell the bet was, if you can email tapcaftransmissions@gmail.com and tell me what I'm supposed to do, or at least give me a timestamp so I can go back and get some commissioners to verify this information. We'll get it certified and we'll send it down the line. But
that's some topical humor, Corey. Thanks.
What are you talking about? I was just talking about how I lost the bet.
I found the Dr. Pershing concept art. It says, the symbol Dr. Pershing has on the right shoulder of his Imperial Scientist uniform was inspired by the emblem first seen on the Camino clone soldiers in 2002's Episode 2 Attack of the Clones. So I assume it's meant to be the same thing, but
inspired by, so they're not.
Yeah, it's kind of
weird.
weasel language, but he's supposed to be a Nazi basically, and I don't know.
I really I do hope that none of this leads up to Snoke, because
I really don't think it will.
I'm glad to hear it, because I think one thing that Mandalorian is successful on is not constantly having a galaxy-wide threat throughout the films, and it really brings you back down to a planet level and a citizen level. So to have this to lead up to, say, I don't know, like Luke would be a real bummer in my books. I don't want it anywhere near as a stepping stone to the sequel trilogy. So yeah,
well, I really don't think it's like a direct connection to Snoke, but I can see it kind of showing some of the technology that was used to either create Snoke or show the cloning technology with Palpatine in some way. I don't think it'll be a direct connection to either of them, just kind of showing similar techniques and kind of explaining those in a different context. But yeah, I really don't think there's any direct connection to Exegol and the Sith Eternal here.
I honestly do think that the fact that they all have head scars is something. I don't think it's an accident. I don't think it's Snoke because it's a different head scar and all the Snoke clones have the same thing, but I think maybe that's involved with the procedure or something. Because Snoke has all these injuries, but he's a clone, or whatever. So my guess is they probably learned some procedures, or procedures somehow make its way back to the Empire or whatever, or the Palpatine, and that will be how it ties in. But yeah, they're not making Snoke's. People are like, oh, you can hear Snoke's theme, and it's just a low droning sound. Snoke doesn't have ownership of all low droning sounds.
Well, we also heard when Snoke was around, we heard Plagueis' theme. So if it wasn't right for Plagueis, I feel like that was a lot more likely than this being Snoke.
Yeah, totally.
Maybe this is Plagueis though, and Plagueis wasn't Snoke. It just so happens that that's the connection here.
That would be pretty funky. It's just the idea that all this is happening on some random backwater volcano world instead of the secret Sith stronghold is just a little.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of. That's where it loses me. What about the so we got to see an Arc of Tens, which was pretty cool. Very well rendered one, and we get to. What do you think? What do you guys think Gideon is planning? What's the deal with those droids he has? Are they going to be droids? Are they going to be people? What's going on? Are they suits of armor?
I think they're going to be droids, and I think it's a small step in a bigger a bigger plan to slowly regain power on the Outer Rim with the Empire. At least that's what I'm assuming. What Thrawn is thinking behind the scenes, at least. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that will pan out.
It will be.
I've got to go turn off the heater because we're back.
But I mean, with the angles they're going with, I really am liking out of the main film series on how the games and the animated series from the past and the Mandalorian now is all interweaving with one another, and I think that's kind of like what you get with the MCU universe. You know, when they cross loads of timelines together.
Yeah,
I'm getting those vibes here, and it's really making it worthwhile to watch everything.
No, I agree. Regarding the Dark Troopers, I wouldn't be surprised because they do look really. Corey, are you back, by the way?
Yep.
Okay. Like, I'm curious to hear your thought. They do look pretty much exactly like the Phase 0 Dark Troopers or Phase 1 Dark Troopers from Legends, which were just the basic droid model. So I've got to wonder, maybe the experiments are to make the next phase of Dark Trooper or to make human beings capable of operating the suit or something. But yeah, they look very, very similar to the Dark Troopers from Legends, which is cool.
Was there a timeline to when they were featured in the game? Because if I'm right, the Mandalorian is set 5 years after Star Wars Rebels. If I'm right.
I forget what year Rebels is, but it's further than 5 years because it's 5 years after Endor. So Dark Troopers only existed in Legends, and that was during the war. So
yeah, during the actual Empire.
Yeah, they're around a lot later now than they were.
Gotcha. So they're shifting the timeline in canon. Gotcha.
Yeah, but Dark Troopers are only really prominent, super prominent in like the Dark Force games, the Dark Forces game.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's a Star Wars gamer comic I think about Dark Troopers, which is kind of cool. I read that a while ago, but yeah, they're not super prominent.
I think they are going to turn out to be droids, but I don't think that the goals that Gideon has much to do with like improving on them. I think it is more related to Force experiments and making himself or others Force sensitive, and I think like himself being kind of the primary one there. But I think the Dark Troopers will kind of factor in as like one of his better tools to kind of try to get child back or enforce his will in other ways. But yeah, I think they're more of a tool than the goal.
That makes sense. I mean, this episode was really similar to the Dark Forces / Jedi Knight series in a lot of ways. Like the base, them attacking the base immediately reminded me of the first level
Kejim.
from the Kejim level from Jedi Knight 2. Even in appearance, really.
Yeah.
And then the Kejim level itself, which I completely forgot, or it's actually I think the second part of the level or the second level, but it's still on the same planet, actually has a scene where you find the Empire experimenting on locals in this case, and it could be locals here, trying to imbue them with Force powers. So there's even like test tubes and stuff. So it's pretty much exactly what's going on in this episode. Then you get the Dark Troopers, and it's like you're one Kyle Katarn away from like a Dark Forces live action, basically.
So I got some other Jedi Knight vibes as well from like just the chase down the canyon, because that just felt like there's a couple levels in. I think it's more in Jedi Academy than Jedi Outcast.
Yeah, it's the Tatooine level. I think. Yeah.
Well, there's the Tatooine one. There's also I think similar stuff on Hoth at some point, but with like the canyon feel going into the base.
Yeah, you're right.
But it all did feel very Jedi Knight, where first episode was very KOTOR, this was very Jedi Knight. But just on the Thrawn thing,
action.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just on the Thrawn thing, something that we were also talking about is that when Dave Filoni does stuff with Thrawn, it's a little bit different than what Timothy Zahn tends to do now, where Dave Filoni is stuck more to like the Thrawn is just the villain, kind of impenetrable but still defeatable version from like the Thrawn trilogy, and kind of just sticking with that version of Thrawn. Whereas the more that Timothy Zahn does, going either backwards in the timeline or even when he was doing stuff in Legends, talking about like all the reasons Thrawn did what he did later with Vision of the Future and Spectre of the Past, where he's kind of tried to rehabilitate and redeem Thrawn retroactively and take away some of the villainous sides. Where like in Rebels and seemingly in here, a lot of it is going to be more in the just Imperial Thrawn is doing this for the Empire, thinks the Empire is a good thing.
Yeah, I think you could still maybe find a middle ground, like where it works with both characters, where it's like it's not the Empire necessarily, it's just like authoritarianism, where like he just wants to have a strong government or a strong military or
Yeah.
law and order, and then that just happens to be. But yeah, you are 100% right that they're somewhat different characters, which is kind of something that I get a little frustrated with because I wish Timothy Zahn was more involved with what they're doing with Thrawn instead of just like kind of an afterthought. But
well, it does fit a lot more with the. Sorry, Charlie, go ahead.
I was going to say because they do that with Dave. I can't pronounce his last name. What's
Filoni.
it? Filoni. They do that with Dave and Ahsoka. So you'd have thought they would have done that with Timothy Zahn and Thrawn.
Yeah, it's just the difference between being an author and being a, because like Dave Filoni was there for the Clone Wars and Rebels, so it's a much easier transition, I guess.
Yeah, and it's not like it's so different from everything Timothy Zahn has ever done with Thrawn.
No,
it's just it is more like the initial interpretation of Thrawn we got, and like Thrawn has always been kind of a jingoistic, warmongering kind of guy, but there's stuff that humanizes him a bit more in some of the earlier and also later versions of him, both in Legends and in Thrawn: Star Wars: Ascendancy: Chaos Rising: The Phoenix
Book 1.
Yeah, but where there's more of a side to him that like actually cares about things like civilian casualties, whereas in the Thrawn trilogy and even in Rebels, and now it seems like the version of him we're going to get in the Mandalorian or whatever connected properties there are, it is more just the kind of merciless Thrawn that is willing to crack a few eggs to make his omelet that we got in the Thrawn trilogy.
It reminds me of when we were talking about Harry Potter the other day, and it's like Dumbledore in the books versus Dumbledore in the movies, where it's like Dumbledore whispered, "Did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire, Harry?" And then it's in the movies, it's like he's screaming, "Did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire?"
Pretty much.
Yeah,
but
I
do you want to
less room for nuance, I guess, in TV when he's just an antagonist rather than a protagonist with internal monologue and stuff.
Yeah, so we'll see if it ends up going or continuing in that direction. But do you guys want to get to this this episode from last night now, or do you have any more thoughts on the siege?
Nope. Cool episode. I will say the final space battle. Well, it was in atmosphere, but the final battle between the Razor Crest and the TIE Fighters were pretty fun.
You don't joust with these guys need to play more squadrons if they're gonna.
Yeah. The TIE Fighters did feel deadly though, which was nice. Because like usually TIE Fighters are just kind of shit, and that's like another thing too about the Dark Troopers. Stormtroopers have always kind of been cannon fodder, but we're like 40 plus years into Star Wars now. There's been thousands and thousands of dead Stormtroopers, so I think that's like one reason why we'll see these Dark Troopers in this season, or at least in the series, probably kick some ass, is because we need a real threat. The only time Stormtroopers have been a threat in this series is when there were literally hundreds of them at the end of season 1. So Dark Troopers should be kind of a helpful way to bring some tension back to just ordinary fights. And I wouldn't be surprised if they kill somebody in their first encounter. Yeah. I guess we can move on to Chapter 13, The Jedi. Or I think that's what it was called, right?
Yep.
The Jedi, yeah. And this is kind of interesting. The plot for this actually leaked in advance. Did you guys see that?
No, I saw that it had. I didn't see it because I was trying to avoid it.
But yeah, what were your guys' first thoughts on this episode?
Charlie?
Do you want to go for it? Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Charlie,
I absolutely loved it. I thought it was. I like how they just got straight into it. I was like, oh wow, they are, and not messing about. They dedicate the whole scene to Ahsoka, and I swear, like if you stand back far enough and look at some of those screenshots, so it would look like it was like from the animated series. I thought, especially when you had like the long distance camera shot of Ahsoka all the way down to the other side of the village. I thought her live action character was exactly how I imagined it in my head. Best case scenario. I liked her. I just think it all meshed really well. And yeah, I was really shocked by the fact that we got a lot of information about the child,
Mm-hmm.
because I was already content and happy with the idea that they will never go into the species of the child. So I was already like, yep, I'm fine. If you don't want to say, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that they even touched upon it was like, oh wow, this is kind of huge.
That was one of
Um,
the reasons that I thought it would end up being a clone, because like then they could have another Yoda, and it would literally just be another Yoda rather than having to introduce another character of the species and have to give more information on like how many are out there, where they're from, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
mm.
No, Yoda and Yaddle were for sure fucking though.
Yeah, the next episode is going to be the Mandalorian stopping off on Coruscant.
It's just gonna start. It's just gonna start. All you're gonna hear is it's just gonna be Yoda clapping cheeks.
Because the timeline matches up.
Yeah, sure.
Did Yaddle die in Order 66? Just to clarify.
No, she died between
probably
episode
died
1 and 2.
I don't know if she's officially died in canon yet, but she leaves, doesn't she?
Yeah, she's not on the council anymore, and
Yeah.
so she's. That was one of the more annoying early lore videos I did, talking about like changes to the Jedi Council between episode 1, 2, and 3, and I was talking about like when Yaddle died, and I was talking about like the out of universe like reasons for this, and like actually no, she died in this book that was said earlier. It's like no, I'm talking about why that book had to be written.
You ever get your cheeks clapped so hard you had to leave the Jedi Council?
Leaving in shame, I guess. So maybe Yaddle's just down there in the depths of the Jedi Temple with her illegitimate child here, training him as a Jedi. Because it seems like Ahsoka wasn't aware that Grogu was there before.
No, yeah, you're right. She just kind of, picked that up when they had their little mind link moment.
And then, like, has no reaction to the fact that he exists.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of like the potential dark side child thing kind of does track with what we've seen so far, and I was like, the amount of anger he's around with the Mandalorian, and the amount of like quasi dark side stuff he's done. Like part of it is that he's a child and is unable to really distinguish between right and wrong in a lot of ways, but just the environment he's in is definitely not a good thing. But you'd think Ahsoka's reaction to this would be like, he's clearly got and using his force powers, whether I train him or not, and he's only going to go further down this path of stuff that's scaring her.
Mm-hmm.
That ties in quite well with your point, Eck, about how they constantly bring up what the child has seen during the time with Mando. So I think that will crop up again down the line, depending on what the child has been impressionable to, and because that's a big connection. It's a big connection to put the child up against Anakin. That you don't say that lightly. So I think it's all coming together.
No, I agree. That's a good point, Charlie.
Yeah. One question that did make me wonder was obviously the final scene of Star Wars Rebels. Would that because that's like the last scene with Ahsoka? Do you think that would be before or after the events of Mandalorian?
Yeah, I'm guessing it's before. What do you think, Corey?
I'm not sure. I have to go back and rewatch it. I forget what happens.
So how old is Jason? Because you see
Jason Syndulla?
Yeah,
right. I think he's 8.
What?
I think he's 8, isn't he?
Is
maybe younger?
Because we know that he would have had been born in like around the Battle of Yavin, because Kanan's dead.
Right. I'm bad with ages.
I don't know. I wouldn't say
he's like 6 to 8. It's animation and it's a kid, so I can't really tell.
Yeah.
Probably a bit younger. So yeah, it's probably right
does indicate that this is, but that's, keep in mind that's 8 years after Yavin, not after Endor. So that means that puts this before.
That's like before. 8 is like upper end. That's as high as I'm willing to go on that. I can call it an expert, Rebels, but
most likely Rebels is before this, the Rebels finale, which I think makes sense because right now Ahsoka is off looking for Ezra. Presumably that's what she's doing. Ezra and Thrawn. Well, she wants to find Thrawn because Thrawn lead her to Ezra. So yeah, that makes sense to me.
We're definitely getting a live action Hera at some point though too.
Yeah, I mean, we've already gotten her in Squadrons, so she'll translate. Okay, that's a kind of a good point to move on to the discussion of Ahsoka. Charlie kind of mentioned this. I thought Ahsoka looked miles better than I thought she was going to, because I had seen like some fan renders with like Rosario Dawson, and it was like kind of shitty, and I was a little bit worried. But I thought she looked great. Some people were complaining about the length of her head tails. But the props guy, or one of the character designer guys for Mando, actually went on Twitter and he's like, they can't be longer than that because the stunts don't work. They just won't work if they're too long.
Like Shaq T's were longer, but she was also mostly just sitting there, and Ahsoka had to do a lot more. And like you could point to them being longer in the animation and then say like, oh, why aren't they like that? But then Ahsoka's eyes are also much bigger in the animation. No one's complaining about that. Like that's just kind of animation.
Shaq T, I was kind of reading up about this. Apparently, Shaq T was meant to have more combat, but it just wouldn't work with her head tails. So, but yeah, that's like the eyes thing. And like Ahsoka's she's obviously a cartoon, or she's a character in animated TV shows, but she is pretty cartoonish. You know, like she's got those really big eyes. So I was like, I don't know if she's gonna translate, but there were a few scenes like during this. The one that I think of the most is the scene where Mando gets Ahsoka in a rope and she like looks over and she gives that little smile before she jumps in, kind of turns it around on him. Like I thought that was like kind of like just out of the cartoon, but pretty much I was impressed.
I did think she was a little bit more somber than even like Rebels Ahsoka was. So I don't know if that's part of her characterization now, or if it's and I'd have to go back and watch more Rebels to see if it really is as big of a difference. But like I could have also seen like Ashley Eckstein doing a good job too. So the casting I could have gone either way there.
I think part of that, because I think some of that might have just been how the episode was. So I kind of want to give, when I first watched this episode, and I kind of tweeted about this morning, I liked the episode, but I thought there was like something a little off about it. And then I kind of thought about it. I watched it again, and I liked it a whole lot more, like a lot more. And I guess it's just like people have made the comparison that this is basically an old samurai movie, and yeah, it totally is. But it's also, you know, it's very dark. It's very it is kind of like reserved in a way, almost in a way that like you'd expect out of a samurai movie. So I think that is partially why Ahsoka came off the way it did, because we don't get like, there aren't that many scenes where we get the big kind of Star Wars music or whatever else. So I think that probably contributed somewhat to her characterization in this episode.
How did you guys feel about the combat with her? Because it did feel a bit more grounded than even some of the other stuff in the Mandalorian with the Mandalorians, where like she was definitely miles off of like cartoon violence, but even a little bit a bit more heavy feeling than some live action stuff from the OT and sequels, let alone the prequels.
I really liked it. I thought it was good. Sorry, go ahead, Charlie.
No, you go ahead. You started.
I was gonna say I really liked it. I thought you're right. It was weightier in a way, but like they still kept kind of her signature style from the Clone Wars, especially.
Yeah, when she flips to the backhand lightsaber.
Yeah, and she does that double slash through the tree.
Yeah,
and whatnot. So I thought it was a good compromise. What about you though, Charlie?
I think it was really well transitioned, and it's like she has quite a like hyper aggressive move style, and it was really present in the beginning of the episode and near the end of the episode as well. And they even cameoed some of her original moves from the TV series to this episode as well. So I think it was I agree. Like she's a lot. She was a very jumpy character as well, even though it was weighty, compared to a lot of what you've seen in Mandalorian, which are literally feet on ground combat. And she was like all over the place, and it was very refreshing, and to see that she kept that compared to the Clone Wars TV series.
Yeah, totally. She was there. That one scene where she kind of savagely like assaults the Mandalorian when he when she sneaks up on him. I thought that was really good. But yeah, what about you, Corey? You asked the question, but let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. I did think it was like different. That's why I brought it up. But I think it really matches the tone of the show while still keeping it feeling like Ahsoka and like she is who she is. So like it's definitely different from what we've seen her do. Obviously, making a transition from animation to live action, but still kept a lot of the core of her fighting style, like Charlie was saying. So I thought it was handled really well. I did think the lightsabers looked a little bit weird, but I think that's just the lighting, where they felt almost more thick and solid.
Yeah, kind of glow roddy.
Yeah, where like usually they seem a bit thinner, and especially Ahsoka's because she's got kind of the double Shoto in a lot of situations.
Yeah, so that's kind of been a thing I've noticed. Well, that's been like a thing really since Disney Star Wars, whereas like it used to be that lightsabers were often done in post, and you notice like they don't usually cast shadows. Like it was really evident when you watch like even The Force Awakens that they're actually real things now. Like the lightsabers give off light, which does add a lot to the scene, I think, especially when you have fights like in the forest and The Force Awakens with the shadows and the light, because that's stuff you often wouldn't get in the prequels.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the lightsabers do always, I find, seem a little thicker now. But yeah.
Didn't they explain why they were so thin in the original trilogy? That like they had to expose every frame of the footage through a light box, and obviously that would cause a thinner lightsaber compared to the thicker ones that you were mentioning.
It's probably something like that, because
a lot of it was rotoscoping, like just having the light.
Yeah, because if you watch especially episode 4 or just Star Wars, like the effects are very, very simple, and like when the lightsabers clash, it's just a yellow flash on the screen, rather than like now you have light being thrown everywhere. Like it's crazy how far the effects have come.
They actually got those people that made the one with like the superheated rod on YouTube. That's what we're doing for all of it.
Yeah, we ran through 3 stunt doubles this episode. Pretty impressive.
Overall on the episode, I gotta say I was really pumped when they were ready to make the move in the village. Just the idea of like a Jedi and a Mandalorian was like really made me like fist pump the air in a way, I guess. I thought that was really cool, especially the end art, the credit art as well. Of Ahsoka and the Mandalorian.
I used a lot of those in my review. It looked sort of cool.
Yeah, it does.
And I gotta say, I ended up getting a little bit misty-eyed about the child at the end, because with more information about the child, it was like, I don't know, I had a bit more of an emotional attachment to him after, like, you know, there was a scene where he was going to say goodbye. You knew exactly what had been he had gone through at the temple, and then being shut in the cradle for God knows how long.
Yeah.
And taking him back into the ship right at the end as well was it was I don't know, I don't know why I ended up getting a little misty eye. I just did. I was like, oh damn, what? Yeah,
because he doesn't want to leave him, but he's trying to do what's best.
Yeah,
If you watch the scene too, when he's sitting in there with the child, like before he thinks he's dropping her off, he's like, or dropping him off, he's like rubbing Baby Yoda's hand. It's really cute. Like you don't usually see him affectionate like that, so it is a pretty sweet moment.
Yeah, there were a couple moments of like finally disciplinarian dad Mando that we haven't really gotten yet. I think 2 or 3 of them, and then especially when Ahsoka's like, well, he's not doing this for me, you do it, see if he'll respond to you. And he does do it, but it just kind of reinforces Ahsoka's reasons for not training him in the first place. Where, like, do you think she made the right decision there? There's another point to that, but
I always hate I think that the reasoning, I don't think her reasoning was right, but I think she came to the right conclusion. Like I think the idea that Jedi can't have attachments is really stupid. Anakin's problem wasn't that he had an attachment to Padme. His problem was that it was an attachment he had to repress and pretend wasn't a thing, and like that's what was taken advantage of, was his fear, and like he wasn't able to healthily deal with a relationship. Like I don't believe the message of Star Wars is don't fall in love with people and don't have relationships. It's, have healthy relationships. You don't want to covet your partner. You don't want to do all those things. You want to have a healthy relationship where you're each confident in that. Like that's the issue that Anakin had. So like I don't like Ahsoka just flatly saying I can't train him because he has an attachment to you. I think she shouldn't train him, but for other reasons. Like he's just a child. It's not in his best interest. That's the thing for me.
Do you think she's just frightened of, because I mean she mentioned it in the episode after all, but do you think she's frightened of how bad it can go with Jedi, like force sensitive people that have attachments? Because I mean, Anakin was an example, and look at the galaxy because of it. So I think maybe she understands the weight of that type of decision, especially when she's already got an ulterior motive to handle too.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think that's why I'd accept that from Ahsoka more than I would from other characters, where like she was Anakin's Padawan, so more than anyone other than maybe like Obi-Wan and Luke, who are a bit less jaded on the Jedi overall than she is, for good like she's jaded for good reason. Like for her, it's like, am I gonna really restart the Jedi Order? And like I don't see that being a big priority for her directly. I think she kind of sees the failings of the Order as well as the failings of Anakin individually, and how they each were responsible for his fall, and isn't eager to get back into that, especially with someone who's already kind of showing some of the warning signs that you did get with Anakin, where there's some like anger and possessiveness, which he's a toddler, but which I think is partially why she's willing to say like, I'm not going to train him, but go to Tython and see if he wants to be trained, and then maybe someone will respond. Which I guess that's another big thing that isn't really being reintroduced into canon here, but giving another more prominent place in canon is Tython. That's shown up in some other stuff in new canon already, but was a really prominent part of Legends, especially.
Yeah, in the Old Republic, that's where you start off, isn't it? On the Jedi.
Do you start off on Tython in the Old Republic as the Jedi?
I thought you did.
Maybe. I thought it was a different planet, but Tython's definitely in the Old Republic. I just forget if you start there or not. You're probably right.
I think it is. I'm not positive, but
that's also where Bane has his big duel.
Yeah, it's basically like it's where everyone gets whisked off away, like to start basically the Sith and the Jedi. So it's a very, very important planet. Kind of cool to have that reintroduced for sure. I'm gonna say though, I am a bit not tired of it, but I wish they would just give up the pretense that the Mandalorian is gonna give up Baby Yoda. Like I wish that they would just become a family, because like stop blue balling me with this sweet like relationship and like just like just accept it.
I don't think they're gonna do that anytime soon.
No,
I hope so too.
One thing that I did want to just talk about while we're kind of on the topic of their relationship is that for the plan, like in order to convince Ahsoka to train Grogu, he was willing to give up part of his armor, even temporarily, to someone that he shouldn't necessarily trust entirely, considering the relationship that they keep mentioning between the Mandalorians and the Jedi. So I feel like that shows a pretty big step for him, like Beskar being so important to him, but he is willing to part with this piece of his armor for just the chance that Ahsoka might help him.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, he basically, isn't that like one mission's worth of armor too? Like, isn't that what he gets in the first episode? So, so yeah, you're right. That is a good point. I didn't even think about that.
But do you guys have any thoughts on like who, if they go to Tython, will he get a response? And if so, who do you think it would be? Are we getting Sebastian Stan Luke Skywalker?
I wouldn't hate that. I know it sounds like you and Charlie wouldn't like that. I wouldn't mind seeing young Luke Skywalker, but I don't think we're gonna make it to Tython, at least not for a very long time. And if we do, I don't think anybody's coming.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's coming. I wouldn't mind Sebastian Stan, Luke Skywalker actually, but probably not here.
I do believe it. It won't be the last we'll see of Ahsoka, especially now that Moff Gideon also knows of her location. With the tracking beacon on the Razor Crest. So I think we'll probably see an answer to that little plot twist from episode.
There's a tracker beam on the Razor Crest?
Yeah, it was mentioned
from the
in chapter
Empire.
12.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, from the Empire. So now they
Yes.
know where Ahsoka is.
Yes.
And I'm assuming we'll have a solution to that on chapter 14 as well. So definitely won't get to.
I really expected the Empire to make an appearance this episode.
Same
I was
here. Yeah.
waiting. I looked at my at the remaining time when he was walking away back to the ship, and I was just waiting for Dark Troopers to come down, and then for this to kind of be a two-parter. But so I was pretty surprised that because it set that up pretty well.
So Charlie and I have to get to Wasted Stream soon. So I guess maybe we should move on to some final thoughts here. Wasted is doing, a friend of ours is doing a charity stream that Charlie and I will be on after the podcast. I don't want to cut it too short here, but just if there's any final topics you guys want to talk about, he did message me saying they were just going to do a derby until we show up. So
yeah, I did notice that the when I rewatched it, I noticed that staff you get seems to be extendable or telescopic. So
people really do care whether those kind of melee weapons are extendable or not. It does come up a lot.
So he probably will be taking that with him, and we see explicitly that it's functional against lightsabers. So I assume we'll see a staff versus darksaber fight at some point, which will kind of be like it's one of the first good live action melee fights we've had between non-force users. We get one in TFA and I guess in The Last Jedi as well, but I got high hopes for that.
Yeah, and I guess like what he's going to use that pure Beskar spear against Moff Gideon with the dark saber, maybe.
Exactly.
He's gonna throw it to blow up his tie later.
Rolls a perfect 20. But yeah, I've never been more invested in the Mandalorian after this episode. Whilst the overarching story, I can get why you might have originally thought it was flat, especially when it was kind of building up to be a bit more. I think they played it safe with this episode with Ahsoka, but it was still really rewarding nonetheless. I gotta say, I was not expecting Thrawn, so that I was just like, oh my god, okay. And that's actually why I'm really enjoying it as well, because it's not like they're blue balling you on this massive overarching story. I was really interested in the Harris, if I'm saying that right, because I was the concept of more Mandalorian. I was like, wow, I want to see more Mandalorian. And then you had Boba Fett and stuff, and I was like, oh wow. And then they showed the potential for more Jedi, and I'm like, oh wow, that's really cool. And then Ahsoka, and now Thrawn, and it's just like a step up, So they didn't blue ball me with something big where everything else underneath it didn't feel as epic, but everything has been unexpectedly epic all the way up. So yeah.
I will say too, we got a couple of nice Rebels/Clone Wars tie-ins. This episode, we saw the little cats, the Loth cats. I know they're not actually Loth cats because they're not in Lothal, but whatever they're called. And we also saw what I'm pretty sure was Morai, the owl, from the Clone Wars and Rebels. It's like she's basically a spirit form of the daughter from the Mortis arc. But I think people are still talking about that one. But it seems pretty obvious that's what it's meant to be.
I didn't pick up on that connection.
Yeah, there's only like one scene Here, I can send it to you if you want to see. Put it in the.
I saw the owl, but I didn't pick up on the
Oh,
idea of
okay.
it being the daughter. Like that didn't cross my mind, but that's probably a safe bet.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, I think Corey, both you and I are a little concerned that that the show becomes sidetracked. I'm not at the point yet where I'm actually worried, though. I'm paying attention.
Yeah, we're not DEFCON 1. I think we're just slightly concerned. We'll see where it goes. I feel like Ahsoka's cameo is the one that I was kind of worried about the most, and so far it's been handled, I think, well. But I think is that it? We're good?
Yeah, I think so.
So
I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all these Star Wars brand designers literally panicking after realizing that they have to change the child to Goro. Like,
it's not changing. No one's gonna.
They're like double taking and going like, what the fuck?
People already call him Baby Yoda instead. They were already like, no.
Yeah.
But thank you for coming on, Charlie. A lot of fun having you here.
Maybe we'll address any questions at the end of next Tapcaf, because there were a few Mandalorian questions. I'm sure we'll do a Tapcaf for the next Mando episode. Maybe we'll kind of just cover a bunch of questions then.
Yeah, we should be getting eventually back to a more regular schedule for the podcast. Right now, it's just whenever Justin's available, but we'll try to hopefully not have a commitment after the podcast next time and maybe get to some more questions. And then I think once you're back a bit more fully, maybe we'll have a whole episode for viewer questions between Mandalorian and some other stuff we've done, because we've had to cut short a few times with questions on previous books. But that's going to do it. Thanks for listening, everyone. Remember to leave a review on any platform, especially Apple Podcasts. I forget if that is that what it's called. It's not iTunes anymore. It's Apple Podcasts.
Yeah.
We read as many as we can. Make sure to insult us, but leave a high star rating, and use the word moist at least twice in your review.
Moist this time. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll read them next time. But thanks for listening,
very much,
everyone.
Charlie, for joining as well. Corey, you rude bitch.
I did say that.
Okay. Well,
that's what I started with.
How about you